the dinim of another 3 weeks is Purim. So we're going over the dinim of have to do with Purim, but it starts with Siman Kuf Mem, say the Abba Parshias. Oh boy, Gimel Sifim. Okay. We're going to discuss there's a Gemara in Megillah that the Gemara says that before Pesach we read 4 different parshas. In addition to the regular Kriyas HaTorah, we read special parshas. The first parsha is Parsha Shkolim. Mitzvah Shem this coming Shabbos. It's already, we're going to bench Shchodesh Adar Beis. So we're going to read, also take out a second Sefer Torah to read Parshas Shkolim. We're going to read Parshas Vayakel this Shabbos, and then we're going to go back one Parsha to Kisisa, which talks about Shkolim. And then later, before Purim, we're going to read a special Parsha, which is known as Parsha Zocha. That is in the Chumash Devarim, which says, you should remember what Amalek did to you. Zocha Shasach Amalek. And then, after Purim, we read a third Parsha, known as Parshas Parah. The idea of Parshas Parah was because in the Beis HaMikdash, in the time of Beis HaMikdash, in order to be able to make a Korban Pesach, you have to be Torah. And if a person is Tamei Meis, then he can't make a Korban Pesach. So there's a whole procedure with the Parah Aduma, where they took after they shechted the Parah Aduma, they burnt it, the ash was mixed with water, and this would be sprinkled on the person who became Tamei. Besides that, he had to go to the mikveh also, but on the 3rd day and the 7th day, so he was sprinkled with this, and he became Torah. And then we read, by the Chodesh Nisan, we read the Parsha of Chodesh Zelochem, which talks about preparing a Korban Pesach. That's the 4 Parshas. The first Parsha is Shkolim. What's the meaning of Shkolim? So, of course, you say money goes first. I mean, okay, money is a very important thing, but that's not the reason for Parsha Shkolim. The reason for Parsha Shkolim is because it says, Be'echa ba'oda mashmiim al Shkolim. On Chodesh Adar, they would announce the idea of giving the machzos shekel. According to the Torah, tzedakah is a very important mitzvah. There's no question about it. It's a mitzvah gedolah and a mitzvah cheshuva, and there's different dinim about how much one should give. But al pi Torah, what you really mechuyev to give is not the ma'aser. Ma'aser is a minhag. But we really mechuyev to give machzos shekel. Machzos shekel were gathered together from the people, and in the Beis HaMikdash, they had a special box, or 3 boxes, where they would put in all these shkolim, and these shkolim were used mainly for the karbonos of the tzibur. The Korban Tamar Shel Shachas and the Korban Tamar Shel Bein Habayim. This was a Korban Tzibur that had to be every day, 7 days a week. In addition to that, there was also what they called Kayetz HaMizbeach. Kayetz HaMizbeach, Kayetz comes from the word like summer. Summer is a time of vacation. So there's also times when the Mizbeach is on vacation. What is on vacation? There's no one that came to bring a Korban. So during that time, when there's no one bringing a Korban Chatas, or an Adava, or a Neder, so they had a fund that they had behemoths that they used to keep the Mizbeach active. So they announced that the people should start preparing the shkolim, and on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, they started using the new shkolim in the Beis HaMikdash. So now let's learn over here. Let's see inside. He says the same. Shabbos Shelfnei Rosh Chodesh Adar. The Shabbos that's before Rosh Chodesh Adar, it means like this coming Shabbos. This coming Shabbos we're going to bench Rosh Chodesh, and the Rosh Chodesh will be in the middle of the week. So the Shabbos before, which is this Shabbos, and which Adar are we talking about? Hasam B'Chol Nisan. In other words, when there's two others like this year, so we're not talking about the first Adar, but we're talking about the second Adar, which is close to Nisan. Who Shabbos Parsha Shkolim? This is Shabbos Parsha Shkolim. V'im Chal Rosh Chodesh b'Shabbos. If Rosh Chodesh comes out on Shabbos, in other words, next week when we go bench Rosh Chodesh is not going to be on Shabbos. It's going to be towards the end, close to Shabbos. Azai Hu Shabbos Shkolim. So if next week Kudei, the week after would be Rosh Chodesh, so then we would read Parsha Shkolim that week. But being that it's in the middle of the week, so we go back to the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh and we start reading Parsha Shkolim. Umetziyim Beis Sefer Torah. You take out two Sefer Gimel Sefer Torah. That means if in the event that Shabbos, in the event that Rosh Chodesh would have been on the Shabbos after the Parshas Pekudei, so then we would take out three Sefer Torahs. Berishon in the first one, Kairin Shisha, the Parsha Shavua. We would read 6 in Parsha Shavua. Ubesheni Kairin Shvi B'Shorosh Chodesh, and the second one is because we have a rule that Tadar She'ena Tadar Kaidim, and the Chodesh Tadar comes more times in the year than Parsha Shkolim, and Umaschilan Ubiyem Shabbos. In other words, we usually start Eskabonu Lachmi Lishai from the beginning of the Parsha Chodesh. He said over here you only start from the part that talks about Shabbos. V'ayim Chotzi Kaddish. Then after you finish the second Sefer Torah, you say Chotzi Kaddish. Uv'shlishi Kaidim Mafte B'Parsha Shkolim. And in the third Sefer Torah, you say is the Mafte, and that's in Parsha Shkolim, going back to Kisisa. Umaftirin Haftaris Shkolim. In other words, the question is, what do we say? Which Haftarah do we say? So we always, the Haftarah always has to do either with the Pasha, some idea that repeats itself in the Haftarah, or the last one that we read from. Being that the last one that we read from is about Shkolim, Kisisa, so the Haftarah also here is Shkolim. Im Tol V'Yischilu Likros Tchilu B'Parsha Shkolim. If they made a mistake, and for the second Torah they started reading Parsha Shkolim instead of Parsha Chodesh, so Gaimer, so then you finish what you're reading. You don't stop in the middle, but you finish what you're reading, and then you take out the third Sefer Torah to read the dinim, to read about the Chodesh, and v'amafta kaira b'shorosh Chodesh, umafta gam ken ha'tayres Shabbos v'rosh Chodesh. That's the Hashemayim Kissi Vodas Adem Raga. This the second part that we're learning now doesn't apply to this year, because this year Chodesh Adar is during the week, not on Shabbos.
When he says Haftarah Shabbos v'rosh Chodesh,
what?
When he says Umaftir Gamkein Haftarah Shabbos v'rosh Chodesh, he ends this if It means the Shabbos Rosh Chodesh or from Shabbos and the Rosh Chodesh? Because it says Shabbos v'Rosh Chodesh.
Shabbos v'Rosh.
So you don't mention Shlomo.
It could mean that you like our minhag is that we say the first pasuk and the last pasuk.
From Shomayim Kisi.
Yeah,
But not from Shabbos. Not from the Pasha.
right.
No.
Shabbos Shofnei Purim. Now he's going to the second Shabbos. Now usually there's a Shabbos in between because Purim is the huh? No, I'm saying between Parsha Shkolim, which you read before Adar, and Purim, which is in the middle of the month, there's a Shabbos in between. So he's saying that Shabbos Shofnei Purim, who Shabbos Parsha Zachor. VaShabbos Shofnei Rosh Chodesh Nisan, who Shabbos Parsha Chodesh. Ve'im Chal Rosh Chodesh b'Shabbos. Now he's talking in the event that Rosh Chodesh Nisan came out on Shabbos. So if Rosh Chodesh Nisan came out on Shabbos, Oz who Parsha Chodesh. So then you don't do the Shabbos before, but the Shabbos of Rosh Chodesh. V'dina k'may Rosh Chodesh Adar shechal lis b'Shabbos, which we just learned right now, but again the Parsha Shkolim. VaShabbos Shofnei HaChodesh, who Shabbos Parshas Parah. The Shabbos, the in between Parshas Zachor and Parshas Chodesh, in between is Parshas Parah. Now he says over here an interesting din. Yes, some say, Ki Parshas Zachor u Parshas Parah chayav mukroisa midaraisa. Some say that these are midaraisa. Now, our minhag is that Parshas Zachor is midaraisa, because the Torah says Zachor shosach Amalek, so you have to remember to eradicate Amalek. But Parshas Parah is not, it's Rav Davke, that it's Amalek. Now, Rav Davke Deraisa, most holders are the Rabbanon. The nafkamina will be if women, that there becomes a question now, are women mechuyit to hear Parshas Zachor? So some want to say that women are not mechuyit to hear Parshas Zachor because you're talking about going to war. And the Gemara says that ish daka lichbosh, v'isha ain't daka lichbosh. A woman does not go to war. But Mary said they want to say, if that's the case, it doesn't apply to women. And some say there's also other things that women could do to eradicate the memory of Amalek. So the minhag is today that women do go to Parshas Zachor. And there's many shuls that they make an early minyan, and they read to another that the husband can stay home and take care of the children, and the wife can go to shul, and then later when the wife comes back to the shul, so the husband can go to the shul and start davening. Now he says a din over here. Ve'ein kaidem behem kotten l'mafta. A cotton can't get mafta. Okay. What's the pshat? The cotton can't get mafta. You may say to yourself, a cotton doesn't get an aliyah period. So what's the chiddush here? A cotton doesn't get mafta. So the emes is, the Rebbe Shulchan Aruch in Hilchos Shabbos, he says that a cotton could get, that the minhag is that a cotton gets mafta. In many shuls, not in Chassidish Shtibach, but in this shul over here, many times a boy who was becoming bar mitzvah would get mafta the Shabbos before his bar mitzvah. He'd get mafta. That's what the Rebbe says, that the truth is, Al-Pidini says, you can include, you need to have a minyan per Kriyas Torah, so you can include the cotton into a part of the minyan, but not give him aliyah. However, he says, Va'achshav ein noyegin, I'm reading from the Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, Va'achshav ein noyegin likres ha-cotton elu l'mafta. Only for mafta you can call the cotton. V'af im ein kohen bebeis hakneses, if there's no kohen in the shul, and there's a Kotan who's a Kayan. So l'chayre, the question is, could you give the Kayan this Kotan? Could you give him the Liyah? So he says that if there's no Kotan except the Kayan, Noigen Likris Yisrael B'Mkaim Kayan, we call up a Yisrael B'Mkaim Kayan, and l'chayre, there's a din of Vikidashtoi. Vikidashtoi means that you have to give the Kayan a certain priority, make him holy. What does it mean? That he gets Kayan. So now, what about a Kayan? If he's a Kotan, maybe we should give him Mitzad Vikidashta, we should give him. So the Rebbe says an interesting din that there's Af Shemin Adin Kayan a Kotan Yachal Aris, even though up din a Kotan could be Eilat to the Torah, but being that we don't do it, is ein mechuyavim kral lechabed kahanim ketanim shemitzvos asay shel bekidashtem ein el al kedashim al gedayim. It's only on the mature. Then the Alter Rebbe goes on further and says, in Sif Tes Zayin, he says over here that a Kotan can get mafta. And he said, not only can he get mafta on a regular Shabbos, l'chayra, on a regular Shabbos, it's not a big chiddush that a Kotan can get mafta. Why? Because it's not really a part of the Kriyas HaTorah. You're repeating, the mafta is the last few psukim of the Parsha, which is a repeat of what you read already for Shvi. So what's the big deal if he gets mafta? So he said, it's not a big chiddush. But he said the chiddush is that he could also get mafta on of Torah, which is a separate kriya. In other words, it's not a repeat of what we read before, but and he gives an example. What's the example? He says, for example, he says, El afilu v'parshas hamusafim v'reish chodesh v'dalet parshias. The 4 parshias, is that all of them im yadei l'misha mevachim. If he's already knowledgeable. Even he doesn't say Pasha's father because he says Pasha Zachim is a chiyuv min HaTorah, and Bakotan Eina Mechuyev, but still you could give him, you can call him to that mafter. He said because he's really not reading it, he's not the Bakaira. There's a Bakaira who's reading it for the public, and he's just reading it along with the Bakaira. So you see that every person is different than what it says in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. That Parsha, number one, he paskins, that Parsha's Zachar is a deraisa. He doesn't mention that Parsha's part is a deraisa. That's number one that you see. Number 2, you see that the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch said that Kotan can't get an aliyah, and Alter Rebbe holds that a Kotan could get an aliyah on Parsha Zachar. What time is it? Okay, one minute. Then he concludes over here in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, U'bnei ha'yeshuvim, people that are living in villages, many people that lived in villages that were like farmers or what, that were spread out over there, and they didn't have a minion, or they didn't have someone that knew how to read the title for them. Tzrichen she'avoyu l'mokom sheyesh minion, they have to come to a place where there's a minion. V'im yefshu lahem, if they can't come in, l'chol ha'pochos yikru oisam b'neginas korol, then they could be yaitza with reading it from a chumash with the trop as we read in the chumash. He doesn't mention it over here, but in the big Shulchan Aruch it says that someone that didn't hear Parsha Zachar could be yaitza if he has in mind when they read it on Purim, we read the title also, and we read the part, not the same part, we read from Bishalach. If he has in mind there to be yaitze with that Parsha Zachar, he could be yaitze the mitzvah midraisa of Zachar Shasachar Moek.